second session, that is what is a democracy? Youth Reception and Presumption. I would like to call this session chairperson, Ms. Minaz Khan, student of Government College of Arts, Science and Commerce, Sanghem. This session speaker, Eugenia DeCosta, student of St. Xavier College of Arts, Science and Commerce, Mapsa. Dipti Dulapkar, GBM's College of Commerce and Economics, Ponda. Pooja Revankar, Government College of Arts and Commerce, Perne. Jessica Pereira, Don Bosco College, Panjim. We have this session observer, Mr. Colin Curry, Trustee of MITI and elected Trustee of ICG.
Participatory democracy, and we have completed our first session. So we are moving on with the second session, which is on what is our democracy, youth perception and presumption. So myself, Khan Minhas Mohideen from Government College of Arts, Science and Commerce, Sanghere, and I inaugurate all the dignitaries, respected teachers and the students. And I would like to welcome Eugenia DeCosta from St. Xavier College of Arts, Science and Commerce, Mapsa, to begin with the topic.
Good day everybody, this is Eugenia DeCosta from St. Xavier's College, Mapsa. I'd like to speak on the topic, what is democracy? India's main problem is its so-called democracy. India adopted democracy before it was not ready for it. Both corruption and overpopulation are symptoms of India's main problem and not the main cause. What India needed was an early period of benign and unifying dictatorship that focused on eliminating societal divisions, eradicating illiteracy, and creating employment, thus readying its people for meaningful democracy. The word democracy stands for people's rule. This implies that the people in question are capable of ruling, or in other words, capable of voting for the right people to rule. Proper voting requires a certain minimum level of social awareness and sense of responsibility. In the vast majority of a population is illiterate and uneducated, social awareness is poor, and elections have a little meaning. Also, if a vast majority of population is poor, social responsibility is low. When a person does not know where his next meal is coming from or when, he is hardly to be expected to understand or worry about his vote. Votes are therefore cheap in India. Anyone can buy them. The right price could be as little as a food packet or a pair of thongs on an election day. Truckloads of such items can be seen moving around towns and villages in India on election day. The number of rich people directly using that infrastructure and therefore voting for them is much smaller than the number of poor people who vote on election day gift givers. Indian politicians therefore do not waste their time and energy in building infrastructure when it is much simpler to distribute tiny gifts on election day. Infrastructure in India has therefore remained very poor ever after 60 years of independence from the British rule. At the time of independence from the British, India was already a society divided on various factors like religion, caste, and language. Politicians took advantage of these divisions. They found that encouraging and furthering such divisions created permanent vote banks for them. The arithmetic for them was therefore very simple. Promise all kinds of benefits to choose vote banks, get elected based on such promises, use public funds to provide the promised special benefits to their chosen vote banks at the cost of the rest of the country. generate resentment among the other groups and that did not get these benefits and further divide to their own advantage. Let me speak about corruption. The vast number of people competing for all kinds of services, leading to demand hugely outstripping supply, coupled with people's ignorance and therefore lack of power, enables corruption to flourish in India. Providers of any service can demand bribes for just doing their job, and the public willingly are ready to pay extra to get their services done. In a society that is poor, unaware and divided, politicians can afford to launch all kinds of huge public projects, steal staggeringly large amounts of money and leave the projects incomplete. After India had gained independence, we never knew what we must do with our newfound freedom. We had lived in captivity for almost 600 years. We never knew what would be if we are free. Our leaders who had fought tooth and nail for our freedom told us that democracy would be the best opinion. We had stepped into the shoes of the British, but we were not comfortable in those shoes. Our leaders told us that we must have another system. They proposed the democracy wedded to socialism. They advocated state ownership of industry while there was no industry. They had proposed an economic system based on a state ownership of capital while there was no capital. Soon we realized that they had all fooled us. We began electing only those parties who pay us for our votes. We do not want to know who they are and whether they would be able to rule us. The party we chose made hay while the sun shines. They led us along the blind alley, and when the realization dawned on us, we discovered that it was already too late. Why we Indians are such a gullible lot? Firstly, we do not know where we keep our minds. Secondly, we assume that we are very knowledgeable. Why do we think we are knowledgeable? This is because we have all our knowledge in our scriptures. We only know it, but we have not experienced it. We live in a state of complacency. We ever live with a type of sense of defeatism. We have some weird sort of ideas. For example, we are ever satisfied in a kind of state we are living in. We never think that there could be better ways of doing things. We have been taught to live with limited means. We want to do nothing to advance in life. We take pride that we have one of the biggest constitutions in the world. All the laws in it are enshrined in its chapters. We never made an attempt to write those laws, neither in our minds nor on our hearts. Whenever we find that a crime has been pre-enacted, we either ask for an amendment or ask for the enactment of new law. It is not making our constitution larger and bigger. We do not realize that the size of the constitution is the indicator of our morals. Large and lengthy scriptures do not make us spiritual. The large number of scriptures denotes how less spiritual we are. All we must do is stop aping the West. You must stop being dependent on others. The least we can do is to become honest. You must stop being selfish. Do not aspire for wealth.
Excuse me, Eugenia, it's already 8 minutes.
I'll just conclude the following. Elect the right people to rule. Educate yourself. Develop respect for women and learn to take care of old people and children. Once you have learned the nice ties of self-rule, then only you would be able to make yourself entitled to be a part of a democratic country, or someone else would come again to rule you. Last but not the least, you must give more than what you receive and do more than you expected. Thank you.
Now I call Dipti Dhulapkar from GVM Shri Gopal Govind Roy Raitwikar College of Commerce and Economics.
Hello everyone. I am Dipti Dhulapkar from GVM GGPR College, Ponda. Today I am here before you to share some views on topic what ails our democracy.
youth perception and presumption. Let us see what is democracy. Democracy is a form of government in which eligible citizens participate equally, either directly or through elected representatives in the proposal, development and creation of laws. It emphasizes social, economic and cultural conditions that enable the free and equal practice of political self-determination. Democracy contrasts with form of government where power is either held by one person, as in a monarchy, or where power is held by a small number of individuals, as in oligarchy. The term democracy is sometimes used as shorthand for liberal democracy, which is variant of representative democracy that may include elements such as political pluralism, equality before the law, the right to petition elected officials for redress, for grievance, etc. Democracy in India. India is the seventh largest and the second most populous country in the world. It is world's largest democracy. It is one of the world's oldest civilization, yet a very young nation. Elections to its parliament are held once every 5 years. India is a constitutional republic governed under the world's largest written constitution, federally consisting of 29 states and 7 centrally administrated union territories, with New Delhi as the nation's capital. Let's see factors which affect our democracy. The success of democracy in India defies many prevailing theories that stipulate preconditions. Indian democracy is the best understood by focusing on how power is distributed. First is religion. Religion as a major cultural influence plays an important role in politics. Political party support depends greatly on differentiating the elaborate among religious lines. The major religious communities are those of Hindus, the Muslims and the Sikhs. Many national religious issues are the key points of the success in elections. Even some of the political leaders use religion of their own sake and as medium for their political stability. Second is caste. The caste system crosses religious boundaries to affect both Muslims and Hindu people. Population. India is second most populated country in the world, next only to China. The over a billion population poses a challenge to the state's ability to provide everyone with job, healthcare, education and other public services. Slowing down the rate of population growth has been a major issue for government over a time. India being a democratic country, the ever-increasing population can only be checked by voluntary means with the informed consent of the people. With the current growth rate, India is set to leave China behind 2020. Development and regions are the other important causes which affect the democracy of a country a lot. Whereas factors such as education, corruption, women's issues, students' politics, criminalization of politics, leadership strategies, and the design of political institutions affect normal and local politics. Thank you.
Thank you, Dipti. Now I call upon Pooja Ravinkar from Government College of Arts and Commerce, Grenada, Paris.
Good afternoon to all. I am Pooja Ravinkar. I am going to present on the topic, what yields are democracy, youth perception and consumption. India is the largest democratic nation in the world. Democracy has been regarded as an ideal form of government in which people are governed by their own elected representatives. It is a government of the people, for the people and by the people. It is a people government in which the voice of the people is supreme and where the laws are fashioned according to their wishes. The question whether democracy has a future in India has aroused grave concern among the educated ones. After achieving independence, our national leaders like Mahatma Gandhi and who were born a Democrat set up a democratic form of government for India. Today, even the highest office of the land can be held by the humblest citizens. Indian democracy has made people of country work towards its own growth. Individual people have responded, but support system is not responding. and there are constantly many pollutions, human as well as commercial, that has let people down. Today we have a skyrocketing inflation. Where was the mistake? The frantic measures like cutting fuel prices or the interest rates is not going to see any major change in the trend. If there is a tapering of the inflation rate, it is not certainly due to these changes that the government is trying to do. Bad roads, buses, trains, bombs on the train, unsatisfied people, increase in suicidal deaths. Many people talk of pillars of democracy as three: the polity, the executive and the judiciary. Some people include a fourth one and call it press, but I would like to call it public. The failure in public services and government support to industry and growth is primarily due to the failure of every one of these pillars of democracy. Every one of them has failed in their assigned duty. This is why we are facing this situation today. As the nation prepares to head for historic goals next month, much of the country's eyes will be focused on the youth, which is believed to be 25 million registered voters between the age of 18 to 29, according to the result of survey conducted. Democracy is not just about elections. Whatever experiences voters have of the limited democratic governments has shown them to be mixed in corruption scandals. Many kinds of initiatives are taken in many schools to develop the interest among students to enter Indian politics. The field of politics is usually a perception. That is, it is not suited to educated people, and its perception is being changed by many school students who take up the idea of the politics as their career and help promoting the cause. These kind of students group inspire many students to choose politics as their career option. Youth participation, in other words, fosters a sense of citizenship and makes policy processes more transparent and accountable towards young people. At the same time, it helps young people build self-confidence, develop a sense of initiative, and acquire test skills that is relevant for the work time, such as communication, negotiation, or teamwork in practical environment. The future of democracy will be bright only when a people possess national character, consciousness, and responsibility. Intellectuals should come forward and create better society with a true democratic spirit, prepared to march further in a democratic way. It is still in the childhood, yet the hope for the future is bright. Thank you.
Thank you, Pooja. Now I call upon Jessica Pereira from Don Bosco College, Penn.
Good afternoon, everybody. As the topic taken is what ails our democracy, youth perception and presumption. I think as a question, has India really got its democracy? According to me, as a youth, I feel it's not. First, what is democracy? It is said by Mahatma Gandhi, democracy means Swaraj. It means freedom. And it is also said by US President Mr. Abraham Lincoln, government is for the people, by the people and to the people. Then why are we discussing this topic today? Due to the corruption and failure of the government. I would like to say we are still in the bondage of illiteracy, which is more important for the success of democracy in India. Each and every Indian citizen, especially the minorities, should be educated. Hereby, they will not be used by politicians for their selfish ends. What is democracy? I feel it's poverty, unemployment, corruption, illiteracy. These are some of the major topics which hail to democracy. I also feel democracy, according to me, is freedom from corruption. In India, we are still not free from corruption. Everywhere you go, we can see corruption. If we go to government offices, here also we see a lot of corruption taking place. Like if you want any job, you pay for the job and then only you get. If you are a politician's son or something like that, then you can get the job very easily. No questioning, nothing of that stuff. Just say, I'm a son of so and so, and there, here, you get a job. Then, violence-free nation. Still, is India really developed? According to me, it's no. Everywhere you see, there's still violence going on. Violence against women, against children, and hence hereby safety of women and children. I think in India, women are not safe. Women are actually shouldn't go out their house. This is what men really want. I think so. Then why is it that women cannot, be safe in India? Isn't that something we actually, should think on? Why are women and girl child especially exploited like this in a small way? What do men think of themselves? That they can do anything that they want to women? Don't they have their mothers and their sisters? This is all I would like to say against democracy, and that's it. Thank you.
And now Saitik Naik from Government College of Arts, Science and Commerce, Cafe will talk on this topic.
A very good afternoon to all of you. I am going to speak on what is our democracy, use perceptions and presumptions. What can be noble, more noble and satisfying than leading your nation on the path of progress? Even the challenge of being the CEO of the biggest blue chip company will pale in comparison. There is no reason why politics should not attract the best minds of the country. To be a politician, one needs a vision, intelligence and knowledge of political processes, combined with hands-on approach to grassroots problems. Politics can teach you as much as lectures in a closed hall and can be as attractive as a career option as any other. However, sadly, politics today has earned its reputation for being a dirty field. The newspapers are flooded with details such as Colgate, 2G and CWG to name a few. In this paradoxical situation, where lawmakers have constantly become lawbreakers, is it any surprise that the vicious circle completes itself and it is only the lawbreakers who qualify to become the lawbreakers of the country? In our society, parents have traditionally given primacy to the conventional and lucrative career options like engineers, doctors, or investment bankers. In a scenario where people have lost faith in their leaders, the government and in politics in general, why then would an educated thinking parent encourage his or her child to venture into the jungle of politics? The widely held view is that politics is not even the league of alternate career options for bright children, whose potential can be leveraged in better ways. Politics is for corrupt, immoral bigots, a danda of chores and gundas. Clearly, the youth plays a vital role in stakeholders of what is probably the world's youngest democracy. It is only logical then that we need a larger number of youths in political forums to represent the aspirations of this vast section of society. While we need the experience and wisdom of seasoned politicians who are now in their twilight years, the exuberance of the youth, their lateral thinking to get things done will offer a whole new perspective to the many problems that the country faces today. But unfortunately, there are only two types of youth that participate in the politics, what I like to call the princelings and the thuglings. The princelings are those who make career in politics because of their fathers, grandfathers or uncles did so. 65% of the MPs below 35 years and all of the MPs below 30 years in India fall in this category. They are the blue-eyed strategies of the Indian politics. The thuglings on the other hand rule the roost in students' union and youth wings, shouting slogans, vandalizing places and resorting to violence at the slightest opportunity. They are aggressive, brazen and loud. If they are backed by influential godfathers, they may witness a meteoric rise in their career as they remain confined to the lower rungs of the party they are affiliated to. Indian youth is aware of the problems that our country faces today. Their fiery passion was visible when millions got together in youth league to support Anna Hazare in his crusade against corruption, and later to protest against the December 2012 gang rape. Despite this willingness to engage, politics is not the desirable career option for most young people and will not be for a long time. So, what is the solution? Well, unless the youth jump into the dirt of Indian politics and manage to stay clean, how is the system ever going to change? We need to develop critical mass of young, honest and successful politicians so that they can become a motivational role model for others to follow. Demonstrations, protests and street plays and candlelight marches can raise awareness and focus attention on burning issues, but ultimately the power to bring change rests with those who sit in parliament. Somebody has to take the first step. These path breakers or early leaders have to be the leaders of Indian politics. They must remain shining despite of the murky whirlpool around them. Only then we can expect to see a change in Indian politics. Thank you for.
Thank you, Sandeep. Now all the speakers have been spoken. Now, if you have any question, you can ask. So I'll highlight some points which were said by the speakers, that democracy stands for the people's rule, and according to the US President Abraham Lincoln, he said that democracy is nothing but it is the government of the people, for the people and by the people. So in the first speaker, Eugenia has said that our country lead behind because of the poor infrastructure and the corruption which flourished in India. Then factors affecting democracies are focus on power which is distributed among the religions, which is Hindu, Muslims and Sikhs. Then caste, which has affected both Muslims and Hindus. Then population. In population, India is the second largest after the China. And development and region. Then according to Pooja, it is democracy is people's government, and they are the people who are supreme. He also said that there is a perception that is field of political, being choosing as a career is a perception. Mahatma Gandhi said that democracy is Swaraj, that is freedom. Our country is lacking in freedom because of some reasons such as poverty, unemployment, corruption and illiteracy. And also about Saideep, he also said about the scams which are taking place in India, such as 2G scam, corruptions and etc. Youth also play a very important role in democracy because they can lead to the change in democracy.
The chairperson of the session, thank you very much. Conducted it well. Made your relevant points which were important to be made from their perspective. And thank all the speakers for giving your views and ideas and your perception, as well as the presumption that you have about what ails our democracy. Like Abraham Lincoln said, I think we can put another saying in here. Today, democracy is of the politician, by the politician, for the politician in this country of us. It's rather unfortunate but true, because he makes sure that he gets the particular people to vote for him. He brings on communalism into his vote bank, and he does things which eventually brings him up to power again. So this is the unfortunate thing about a country like ours. But then it is up to us, and more importantly, the high percentage of youth that we have here, and therefore this kind of seminar or session that we are having, to instill in this youth that you must take part in this so that you make a change, you make the difference, you add towards this kind of difference. So what is important now, before I go any further with my comments, I would like for you all to please, if you made any notes, to please ask questions. It is very important that we all take part in this session and have our own ideas or our own comments or what we presume is the democracy that is ailing this country. So please, somebody start the session by asking questions. Is there somebody here who would like to? It would be very appreciative. We brought you here for a purpose. Please ask questions. Yeah, please.
Okay, mine is not actually a question, but as you said, now democracy has changed, that is, of the politicians and all. I have my own definition to democracy, and that is, we usually say that democracy is for the people, by the people, and of the people. For me, it is democracy is B-U-Y, by the people, F-A-R, for the people, and O-F-F, of the people.
Okay. Yeah, good point there. That's a tremendous point which you've made. Please, somebody else, even if it's not the student youth who are here, please, if the adults here, or the principals, or the faculty.
I have realized that at least the speakers, and I also presume the audience consisting of the youngsters, one thing, they are convinced of the very ills of democracy, and they don't want to tolerate such discrepancies and ills to take place and govern our country. They want some change. This is something good. So, but I would like to ask these speakers as well as members of the audience who are youngsters, could you propagate the good ideas that the governance should be in a very right perspective and to give up what ails our governance? If you could introduce some movements or some organizations or some exercise that you could undertake to propagate, educate the youngsters, not to be led by the politicians whom we label as selfish politicians or corrupt politicians, so that there is a change in the society. This is my question.
Good afternoon to everybody. Can't we introduce something called studying political science? How to run a government, how to run a correct government. If we can learn moral science, we can learn ethics, we can learn biology, we can learn physics, we can learn everything. Why can't we learn how to run a government, how to run a state, a corruption-free state? Why can't we learn that? Why can't colleges and universities and schools from small level, small scale of level, why can't we have seminars every week? Why it has to be one day of a year? Okay, come on, we are going to talk about democracy. We are going to talk about participatory democracy. But why not every week? Why can't we do that? We go to church every Sunday. We can talk about our nation every Monday. Am I wrong?
I think you have a valid point there. In fact, in my opening speech, I did make an issue about it, or I made a point about it, stating very clearly that we have classes for the Indian Administrative Service, the Indian Foreign Service, but we have nothing about teaching our youth what politics is all about, what governance is all about, how the democracy in this country should run correctly. So yes, he has a very valid point there. But it's the youth today who can make the issue, more vulnerable towards the politician going for it. So it is, unless you make an issue about it, will somebody take some heed towards it. So these are good points that have to be taken down and eventually implemented. Would anybody else like to say something?
I have one more question, sir. When it was freedom or fight for the independence, we had youth icons like Bhagat Singh, from where we could learn what is for importance, what is freedom. We could learn. Whom should we see today to learn correct politics, right politics, corruption-free politics? From where? Where is the book for it?
There's no book, unfortunately there's no book. It's more the experience that you will get through the wrong, corrupt actions of politicians that you have to learn from and make it right. That is what is more important. So therefore I would like participation, because you have your own ideas of what you want to do to right what is wrong. So if somebody can stand up and say something more, I'll be more. Is there anybody else? Okay, then let's go. Somebody else, please.
I don't think that corruption only starts from a...
We see in our colleges, since we are youth, we're talking about youth coming in front to change the world. It starts from college over there. Every time we go in colleges, youth, serious towards what they do and what are the choices of students in these days. Everybody, and what about the social sciences, what about law, what about in this world? So I want to ask you, do we really want to change the world? And if we want to change, then it is changes.
Like you rightly say, it's rather unfortunate. Father and I were talking just before the session started, and I was saying to him they want to go to do in their future, because it's not only becoming a scientist or an engineer or a lawyer or somebody of that kind of resource for this country of ours that is going to change the country, but we need people in so many other fields. We need people to be even as small as carpenters. Like I was telling Father a little earlier, it would be great if somebody would brew cashew feini and become a big millionaire out of doing that, where today we have what Father rightly says, we have a patent for it today. There's a big business ahead of it. And we have a Goan here who's now brewing tequila, which has become world famous. So it's not only us studying to become scientists, or us studying to become lawyers, or us studying to become engineers, or what our parents tell us to do. There's another thing that Father was talking about, is more importantly educating the parent. The pressures on the children are too much because they are forced to do things possibly they don't want to do. But at the same time, the institute should also have some kind of semblance as to what way they are going to help the students. Although there is problem in the curriculum not to. How they are going to help students to make decisions on where they can go in the future. What is available for them and what future it can hold for them. So that is an important factor. Abroad, the systems have changed completely. From the standard 8 onwards, you can decide how many subjects you want to take towards what future you want to hold. When you come to the 10th standard, then you start to take only those particular subjects which you want to eventually make a career out of. You want to go into science, you take science subjects. You want to go to maths, you take maths subjects. You want to become a journalist, you take subjects like English literature, English, sociology, psychology. You know, those are the kind of things that will improve your future. That doesn't happen here. It's rather unfortunate. But the systems are like that. But I think the schools and colleges, like I was telling fathers, there's some kind of consultancy or somebody on board who should help students out.
I would like to answer my friend's question. I think we don't need to follow anybody else. If we are ourselves, if we don't follow corruption, then I think we don't need to follow anybody else. And as far as the book is concerned, sometimes we learn many things from the books, but according to the situation, you know, that book doesn't work. That it's your own mind who works then. So I think your own mind is more important. And but the most important thing that you need in all this kind of thing is the politician should be educated. If he is not educated, then obviously he will not be able to, or and experienced, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I ask you, sir, that we elect politicians every year, but why are the same politicians elected every time? Don't we know that they are corrupt? Or are we blind or something? Or we are just looking at the money that they are giving us?
No, it's not that. We know they're corrupt, we've done wrong, but it's the whole system of the electoral process that happens here.
So, but we are like following, like if someone who goes and votes that candidate, the second person also goes and votes. We also should like go for like someone who's sitting like newly, a new candidate.
So then what are we talking about democracy? We are not talking about democracy, we are talking about feudalism here where you vote because 10 other people are voting and therefore you are going to vote. That's not correct. And that will go out into the world. These are things that are important. I have great respect for women who, I was in Bombay for many years, and I've seen in a train in Bombay, women who go to work. In the morning before they get up and go, they will wash the clothes, they'll make their tiffin and food for their husbands and their children, make sure that their children are dressed up and gone to school, and they take off and go to work. At night when they're coming back from work, they will buy the vegetables at the local market, they sit in that train, they will clean and cut those vegetables, they will come back home and cook a night meal, they will clean up everything and go to sleep the last in that family. That is the respect I have for women. This is what it's all about. It's rather unfortunate that we have a system that imbibes from it starts from basically a caste system in this country which puts women down. This is the sad thing. And therefore, this message you should take back home to your own parents. It's an important thing. Think about it. See where you come from. I'm sure a lot of you who sit down here see these kind of things happening in your own homes. Don't let this happen. It is important to note also that tomorrow there's enough money to educate 2 kids, and 2 kids can't be educated. The parents will educate the 2 boys first and forget about the girls. Why? These are things that are happening. It should start at the family level. That's what's important. Yes. Would work better. I don't think the students would be able to take this.
No, I'm just giving an example of what's happening around the state.
Does anybody else want to ask questions? Yeah, please. Yes. You have a comment. Personal about it. It's a policy decision by the government for various reasons. We are talking at our level. level here which we see happening within ourselves, but there are a lot of other states and a lot of other places which don't have this kind of situation or don't have this kind of gain to do anything for themselves. They have to be helped. And it's a larger amount of people from there rather than from a state like ours, which is one of the smallest states in the country. I think we'll wrap this up. Most of the comments that I wanted to make have been asked in questions here. And okay, I'll give you a last one there, and then we'll close up, please. Okay, all, I wanted to make certain comments which already have been picked up by questions and answers. Thanks so much, and thanks for your participation. And I hope in the afternoon we're going to have the same kind of participation, because that is what is important. Thank you very much. Have a great lunch, and be back.